So, welcome, Perennial Pride listeners. We've got a unique episode this week. Really excited. This is the first time I actually have two guests on, which would be a lot of fun. And a second unique factor, it's actually clients of mine. So, we're starting to do these now just to share different perspectives on how people are managing and controlling their wealth and how it's affecting their lives and the direction of where they're going on their financial journey. And so today I have a really fun guest with me today, Adonis and Daniella Chamblay. Help me figure out how to say it in the correct way, in the cooler way. And a really fun group. I've got to learn a lot about them and really excited about what they're doing and where they're going. So Adonis and Daniella, welcome to the Perennial Pride Show.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
That's awesome. So you're my first guest as client, so I'm really excited. Thanks for agreeing to be on and sharing your experiences because I look at you guys are always fun to work with, but it's also enlightening to see how you're learning and taking control of your own future and your finances, and it's always fun to share how others are doing it. So to kick off, and why don't you tell just the listeners just a little bit about you guys? You guys are in the real estate world, right? And recently married, so congrats on that. So that's awesome. So tell me a little bit, the audience, a little bit about you guys.
Well, we have been working in real estate, him for a little over a decade, me for 6 years. We actually met in real estate and got married and all that fun stuff. We work kind of in leadership positions at our company. So he is a recruiter, sort of manager of the office, and I help with the coaching program that we have. But then on the side, I do a lot of real estate still. And we currently own a 2-family home that we love. And yeah, that's just a little bit about us. Anything else?
I mean, she hit the main things just now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a lot more, but we'll get into it a little bit in this conversation. So it's interesting. Obviously, real estate is a interesting topic these days, and we can get a little bit more about that because I think I've told you and others. I said if I had to do it all over again, I'd be doing what you did, right? Is to own a multi-family home and live in one and rent the other and kind of see what that life looks like and help you build your wealth. So tell
Funny
me.
you say that, Tom. It's funny you say that just really quickly because so many people in our real estate world have said the same thing to me. So I knew when it was time for me to buy a house or if I was fortunate enough to buy a house with a beautiful significant other, then the first one had to be a multifamily. Like that was a non-starter.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I want to go through that a bit more to kind of see how you got into it, right? And it sounds like you got there and were convinced it was a good starting point, but walk through some of the steps. But even before there, because it's always fascinating, because you guys are younger, to hear a little bit more about kind of your history of learning about even just personal finance in general. Like what stuck out to you as you were growing up, even family-wise? I mean, frankly, my parents never talked about finances. It was kind of like a taboo topic, which I'm trying to get out of this world as much as possible. So can you share a little bit about kind of your history of learning about personal finances, how it shaped you as you were kind of growing up?
Yeah, I'd say we both had similar experiences where certain things were talked about or like we overheard from our parents, but there was a lot that was never mentioned. And, and even when you go to high school, you wish there was like a real life class that they could give you where they talk about taxes and checks and all that fun stuff, but that doesn't really exist most times. So it was a lot of like figuring things out kind of as we went. I mean, we both were fortunate enough to go to college, and I think that's where we started to be exposed to, certain ideas that we hadn't really had to think about. We had to be responsible for ourselves. So we started figuring it out, but a whole lot of our education about the financial world has come from working at Keller Williams. The education aspect is like a huge part of our company. So I started at our company when I was 20 and I was an intern. So I was still used to taking classes. So I would take all the classes that our broker did. And they are just really financial forward. They want you to talk about all these things. And that's kind of where we started to like really get all these ideas and start to do our own research. And then we would just talk about it with each other. And that's kind of how it grew.
I'll tell you, Tom, growing up in my household, we didn't have a whole lot of financial conversations either. However, one thing that, like, the pretty much the totality of the conversation was don't get into credit card debt. It's horrible. Don't let that happen to you. So I never got a credit card until I was an adult. So I was thankful to not have any credit card debt, and yet I would have appreciated a little more.
It's a good start. It's a good start. I agree.
Good start.
Yeah, because you mentioned the college days. I vividly remember going to college and they have all these credit card offers all over the place to give you. So I signed my name and life away for a T-shirt, type of thing. Didn't know what the heck I was getting into, but I'm glad, Adonis, you got that good advice. Like, be careful. Those things, it can get out of hand. Yeah, I agree. It's interesting to see on the other side. I've talked to people who are older and have elderly parents, and they don't even know what will happen when they pass. They don't know what kind of wealth they have or coming, or it could be $10 million or $0. And it just kind of shows you how the topic of personal finance can sort of just be something that people just never get comfortable talking about. And it's your family. That's why we do these things for our family. So it's ironic. So, and Adonis, were you in a financial role at some point in your life? You were at some point earlier?
Yes. I did work at a financial services company. And it's interesting talking with somebody like you, Tom, because this company had the complete opposite philosophy of what you teach. And, being outside of it and no longer being stuck in that mantra and the things that they taught me, I agree with what you say more. So I'm thankful to have met you in the first place.
Well, this is the thing, and I say this for everything. This is why you guys, I love it, because you guys are taking responsibility and learning yourself and figuring out what's right for you. What I say is not right for everyone either, but you're empowered to figure it out for yourself, and that's the cool part of it. So yeah, it's funny. That's why it's so many facets of it, but this is why, for people who want to, like you're doing, take control. You're doing it yourself. Take responsibility and continue to learn. So on that note, I'd like to just shift gears a little bit and go back to the real estate stuff, because I think I often hear this from people trying to get into real estate to maybe get out of what is typical, right, in terms of financial advice. And they say, well, one of the places I want to get into is real estate. I just don't even know where to start. So can you maybe share a little bit about your journey to, obviously you've been in real estate for a little while, like what finally clicked for you to make sure that, hey, this is the direction I need to go from investment, and it kind of led you down this path to owning a duplex as your primary and kind of a little business?
It was definitely a joint venture. We would not have gotten to where we are unless the two of us kind of put our heads together. I had one vision of what I wanted, and she had a different vision of what she wanted. But I'll let her tell the story of how it came to be.
It's kind of a funny story. So obviously we were taking the same classes at our company. We had certain ideologies that we completely agreed on. We both wanted to buy our first house together. I really wanted a condo because I said we can get a condo, we could keep it and then rent it once we're done living in it. But I just think that's our next move. And he very much was like, no, we need to have at least a 2-family, if not a 3-family. And I'm like, where are we going to find that in our budget? And one day I caught him going to see a 2-family in Norwalk without me. And I ended up showing up because I was like, no, we're seeing things together. And I get there and it's a disaster. It was I think it was $450,000. So lower end for a Norwalk multifamily.
Run down, busy street.
It was just an absolute mess. And I just remember having a whole crisis afterwards where I was crying and I was like, if this is what you want, I don't know what to do about this. So then we kind of had to, put our brains together. And the good news is that I was actively a full-time agent at that time. So I actually had a couple clients looking for 3 families in Bridgeport. And I'm, from Bridgeport, I'm from the area. And so I told him, I'm actually seeing these really nice multifamilies in Bridgeport. He's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I know. You wouldn't think that. And so I sent him a few and we just decided, okay, let's just go see some of these nicer updated ones one day. So we had 4 on the docket. The first three were updated, but we didn't exactly like the areas that they were in, just like not for us. And then we pulled up to the fourth one, and we basically right away knew it was our house, like even from just like the street. And then the owners showed us the house. We loved them, and it's, you know, this beautiful updated two family, and it's just like literally we could not sleep. Like we left the house and like we called our mortgage lender right away. We were like, we need this house. We couldn't sleep that night, and we both like turned over and we were like, were you thinking about those backyard lights? Because they have like these hanging lights that we really liked. But yeah, so we just fell in love with the house immediately, like first day of showings, put an offer in and ended up getting it. But yeah, that's kind of like the journey to get to that point.
Tom, before that, I was living in a one-bedroom in Stanford. I didn't have a dishwasher. I didn't have laundry. I just wanted a place where I could wash my dishes, and I had that and so much more. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, and it goes to, I mean, that's why even the real estate stuff, it's like you got to get out there, right, and learn it and see what's right for you, right? You kind of, because you were in the business, obviously had a little advantage, but that's why it's so good to work with people like you that know this, the industry and the environment. It's all local, right? So you got to really have a strong understanding of what's going on and what looks right. And you guys kind of sounds like you knew it once you saw it. So once you started, and obviously with the idea, Adonis, you started doing, you were going to eventually start renting this out, right? That was the plan, at least what your vision, right? And so now it became your joint vision. Right. So walk our listeners through a little bit of kind of the journey to actually be a landlord, right? Neither one of you were landlords before, right?
Correct.
It's true. We weren't landlords, and some people, when they buy their multifamily house, it comes with just a house. We bought ours, and it had people in it already. What a bonus.
Oh, it did. Oh,
yes. Our second floor already had tenants, like long-term tenants that were there, and that was fine for us because we were like, okay, like we'll automatically start making rental income, so that'll offset the mortgage, because we knew if there weren't tenants in, that we realistically would have to get tenants in within the first month or two, because that cut our mortgage payment in half, and that was very important for us to be able to sustain the house. So we accepted the current tenants. They were
Section 8 tenants?
They were Section 8 tenants, which was great because we had them through COVID, and it was nice to know that no matter their employment status, we would be getting a check.
Right.
So I, have never had a problem with that. We had never had tenants before, though, so we just didn't know what to expect. And I will say, because they had been in this house like 2.5 years longer than us, it felt like they owned the house for a while. Like they knew all the inner workings, like they did laundry whenever they wanted. Like it was just very lax because that's how the other owners were. So we didn't really want to step on their toes because they'd been there for so long. But then luckily, they decided on their own accord that they wanted to leave kind of like the June during COVID. And we were like, oh, of course, like no worries. Because we also knew we could charge higher rent. The thing with Section 8 is that they put limits on how much they'll give on a voucher towards a certain unit. So they had slated us as like $1,400 max. And we knew we were worth more than that. So when they left, it gave me a chance. I'm also a little bit into interior design, so it gave me a chance.
Well, she's more than a little bit into
Oh, yeah, I could sense that. I could see the sparkle in her eye there.
Yeah, so it gave me an opportunity to go up there and kind of just clean it up. I painted everything gray, we got like a new stove, just made it look more aesthetically pleasing, and then we listed it for $300 more a month, and we got it right away. So that was really cool. We, have been really lucky to have really good tenants since we kind of did the rent increase. We had our first tenant we put in that was super quiet and great, especially during COVID when everyone was home. So that was really nice. And then we've had the current tenants, they just renewed their second year, and they're really, really great. And you do get used to it, At first it's a little weird to hear people moving around in a different unit, but you do get used to it, and luckily they're super quiet. So, we've been super fortunate to have really good tenants.
Some of our other friends, Tom, who are real estate investors, are like, oh, so you live on the top floor? We're like, no, we don't. But the unit that we live on was already redone. The previous owners, they made the home that they wanted to live in, and it was move-in ready. So between this area and the lower level, it made more sense for us to live on this floor.
That's great. Yeah, and that's you always hear the key for that is I own properties that have property managers, and it's the importance of screening the types of people you're potentially, that's so key, because that could be I've had disasters when that's not done well, and it sounds like you took some time to look at them and understand if they're a good fit for your property.
Yeah, for
Sounds like
sure.
it's
There was a
working
lot
out.
of screening that went on. I mean, we typically know how to screen because we were agents, but also, especially because we lived in the property, you have more say on your tenants when you actually live on the property. So, it was just, we had numerous offers, but it was really like a whole mix of like credit and income and references. Like we wanted kind of all of it. So we did do a really thorough job, but it's paid off because the tenants are really good. So.
That's right. That's right. Hard work up front. So as it goes now, right? And so far you have been able to raise rents, right? And we've heard this, and your property probably has grown in value too, right, over the time. So it's a really great thing, and you probably benefited because you had to probably have some leverage on the house, right? A note, so that's good. So what anything you do differently with this purchase and how it's being managed so far? Anything that you would change of how you approached it?
Honestly, probably not. Like we always talk about how fortunate we were that day we saw this house because there was another offer on it, and if we hadn't seen it that day, we wouldn't have gotten it. But I do not kid you because I work in the Bridgeport market still. I have not seen a better two-family in the 3 years since we bought the house. And we just talk about like, thank God we bought it before COVID because this house would literally be worth 200,000 more than what we bought it for. So we feel so fortunate. We always, even 3 years later, are like, I love this house.
Yeah,
This house
yeah.
is great. It's so good. And even our tenants, like it was a learning experience. The first tenants weren't bad by any means, but I'm happy they were there because it taught us like certain boundaries to add with the newer tenants that came in. And those are working really well. So I don't have any regrets.
No, yeah, I love it. It's awesome, and we get to learn a lot in the process. We were fortunate enough to be able to refinance when the rates went even lower. So we did that twice. We
Yes.
refinanced once, Tom, and then like within 6 months, we got a letter in the mail saying, hey, you may be eligible to refinance. We're like, there's no way. But we called anyway, and they were like, yeah, I think we can make this work. We're like, what? Our rate is incredible.
Yeah, we have the lowest rate in existence, and we will never touch it
Not
or
gonna
change
touch
it.
Well, no, yeah, definitely not now. Yeah, but even so, like I know with rising rates, and when this podcast is being recorded, rates are rising a bit, making it a little bit more challenging, but they're still historically pretty good,
That's right.
right? And that's why for folks who are maybe interested and want to connect with Adonis and Daniella about investing, like it's got to be you're looking at it as investment to see the cash flow, right? The return aspect of it isn't just a rate on a mortgage.
Well, the thing
It's
that we
bigger.
always say is like, you date the rate, you marry the house, because you don't have to keep that rate. Refinancing is always an option, especially if they do. I don't think they'll go down to what they were, but at some point in history, they will go down again. So it's not like this is your forever sentence, but also like rent increases are by far higher than the interest rate increases. So in one of those, you get to build equity for yourself. In the other, you're giving money just to someone else. So it's still the better option, even if it's a little harder to see that.
Yeah, no, agreed. That's why it's a bigger picture, right? And it's and you're also thinking short term versus long term too,
Right.
Right. There's a big difference. I was just talking to somebody about that, and everything gets so near term focused. Like, what do we do now in the next 6 months? All that stuff. I said, well, you got to think longer term about some of these things, right? What's it look like for you? What's your vision? Like, you guys have the vision longer term, right? To have an asset like this or more assets. So on that note, what's kind of next phase of things? Are you planning for additional property purchases? What's kind of next on the docket?
Yeah, definitely. My lovely wife has us on a nice email drip right now, so whenever new properties come on, because remember, she originally was interested in getting a condo, and we were crunching the numbers a little bit, and that is our next path. We want to get a condo as an investment property, make sure that it's the right one, put tenants in that, and we want to keep acquiring homes. Buy and hold is definitely our strategy for real estate investing.
Yeah, we never want to really let go of a property. As long as we're making the right decisions, we shouldn't have to. So like this house, we will never sell this house. It will be rented out once we don't live here, and then it'll be in a trust for our kids. Like that's just how we feel about it, and that's how we're going to feel about everything. So yeah, our next purchase we won't ever be living in. We just want like a small, good commuter condo. Bridgeport has really affordable condos, so we're just going to be keeping an eye out for that. But then the money we make and profit from that will go towards future purchases, and it's just a cycle that kind of keeps going.
Man, that is just incredible. Like I even here you are in if I'm allowed to say in your 20s, right, Daniela? Like you're talking about passing on an asset through a trust to your children that are yet to be born. Amazing, right? I mean, this is the type of stuff that you think about those things, and I could tell you're smiling when you're saying it. I'm like, wow, that's incredible. Most people don't even have their estate plans together, even thinking about it, right? Because they think we're all immortal, right? We're never going to pass it. But no,
we're fortunate enough, Tom, to regularly be around people who know more than us, who have had different experiences than we have, and are willing to give us their knowledge and not allow us to fall for the same pitfalls they fell in. So make sure you get yourself a strong team. Make sure you get yourself around people who think bigger than you do, so it can expand your thinking.
And just in terms of the trust, the main reason I even know about that at my age, or am thinking about it, is because working as an agent, I've seen so many houses that get stuck in probate court because there was no estate. There was nothing, there was no trust where it could just be passed down to the family as it should. Instead, it had to be this really stressful court situation that lasts months and months. And so seeing that on the agent side just made me be like, how can I avoid that? Like, that's just seems very stressful. So
that is just amazing stuff. I mean, I hear it all the time. I stress to people all the time to have that, and to have that, you can just, it's a gift to your family on the other end, right? It's a sign, to me, it's a sign of love that you make it easy for them, right? And that's what you're doing. That's awesome. That's incredible. So one of the things I also think about as it relates to real estate too, and these days people are curious where, because they need money, right? They need cash to be able to afford these opportunities that are coming or might come, right? In terms of that, and obviously stashing cash in banks. And I know we've talked about how where the other places that store cash, right? And I know you guys have adopted some of that and took a little learning, right, around that to say, how do I store cash somewhere else, right? Can you share your sort of perspective on it? Because I obviously on this podcast talk a lot about the family bank and infinite banking type stuff, and you guys have kind of started down this path a little bit. Can you share a little bit more of your experience with it and how you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, Adonis first started seeing you without me, and he'd come home and be like, oh my God, this guy is like explaining things in like a completely opposite way. Like, you need to like be in on one of these meetings. And I was like, okay, like, sure. And so then that's when me and you met. And then I started seeing like, oh, because, your whole thing, like what I think your superpower is, the whole whole life insurance aspect of things, and using that as like a savings arm bank situation, which is super cool, like to think about. And we definitely see the value, especially with like the tax benefits and just, the money continuing to accumulate, even if you do borrow from the family bank, like it's not the same as a bank where once you withdraw it, your balance is just lower and your interest rate is barely anything. So it's just like a completely different way of saving that it did take a while to wrap our heads around. Like, it's not intuitive.
Not at all. Tom, I had to watch you do this like 2 or 3 times. I'm like, how? Come on. There's no way. And if this is true, how come everybody's not doing it? Why don't they talk about this in school? It's just a whirlwind of emotions. I was feeling like, oh, wow. Well, I'm thankful that I have Tom in my life. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, and I like talk about it to like my family, because I'm big into trying to get them into just financial thinking more. And I talked to my mom about it. She's like, oh my God, like I wish I knew about something like that. Like she just didn't. And, you know, even my sister, she's like, say that again. She like, it's just, it's hard to grasp at first, but then once you see it in action, like now we have policies, he's actually borrowed against his policy. So like now we've kind of seen like, oh, that's how it
Yeah.
works. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the beauty of it. Just like you're going through your real estate journey to see it, and you're like, oh, I got this. It's not as bad as I made. And you guys are probably already there because you're in the industry, but just like anything else, when people are word again to real estate, I don't want to be a landlord. You never experienced it. How do you know?
Exactly.
Right? You
What
got
are
to
you basing
experience.
that off of? Who said that?
Yeah.
What do you know?
And that's unfortunately a lot of stuff in our world. Like not even just finance, just in general, right? Just assume things, but you guys are at least willing to do the work to figure out if it's actually true or not. And that's what I had the same experience with my first encounter with learning about infinite banking too and family banking. It was just like it's so odd, but it's really not. When you really get down to it, right? It's actually pretty simple. I store money somewhere and it protects my family, right? That's a pretty good thing, and the IRS likes it. So I like not tipping the government extra money if I don't have to.
Right.
So yeah, that's why you guys do real estate,
Mm-hmm.
at least partially, right? They actually go very much hand in hand, and they actually work very similarly to each other.
Yeah. I think that's why I understood it rather quickly because it is like I could see it. It's just a different type of bank or holding for your money, the same way a house is,
Yeah.
where you could borrow against it. The big difference is borrowing against it with a bank or with your insurance company, and those are definitely different terms. So,
Yeah, yeah. Once you get used to it, but you borrowed against it, and it was harmless, right, Adonis?
Right. Yep.
Pretty easy. Did they make you do an application or do a credit check?
They did not. No. They
What?
told me how long it was going to take to get there, which was
Yeah,
not very long at all.
it's crazy, right? People I mention to me all the time, like, how could that be? And I said, just try it, right? Even for $100, you'll see it's pretty easy. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So I want to shift gears a little bit with Don, and I kind of before we got on here, I thought I was going to mention this, but you when we first met, you shared with me that you had someone very important in your life that had actually gifted you as part of their estate some money, right? And it was through a life insurance policy. Is that accurate?
It was through an annuity. Well,
Oh,
no, you're right, Tom. My grandmother on my father's side, Viola Violet, she was a sweetheart. She's the type of person who makes sure she takes care of everybody, right? Even when I was like going to college, she'd send me those checks that I had to cash for like, I don't know, $20 or whatever it may be. She's always making sure she's taking care of people. I used to speak to her on the phone, and she said, you got to make sure you get a good job. And, church-going lady, she understood about protecting people that matter to you. So when she passed, she had her account set up so that her kids and her grandkids would be able to get something. So, yeah, I was not expecting anything, but she did leave me a little bit of money. And I'm not talking more than $5,000, but I wanted to make sure I was going to do something with it so that this money could continue to grow. I didn't want to just spend it on something that wasn't going to be meaningful long term. So I was able to talk to you about some ideas as to what we could do. And then what we ended up doing was starting this whole life fund right here, this whole life policy, so I could be able to do things like borrow against it and keep it growing. So it was very meaningful to me.
that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, and looking at what that's done, and it's now obviously protected you for ever and your new wife Daniella and future kids. Like that small amount goes a long way,
Right.
right? You set a course here that it's going to impact people that are not even born yet. It's incredible.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
So in a way, like doing the same thing that she did.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this. This is not the solve for everything, but it's a piece of your financial life. And it's so funny because people, we talk about houses, they protect the heck out of their houses. No one would not protect their house 100%, right? Even if you
Right.
had no mortgage on it, would you protect it for 10%? Nobody does that. But they don't protect themselves and their number one asset, and to protect their families.
Right.
It's just a different way of looking at it, and you've kind of shown what that could be, right? That's awesome. So, so this is great. This is really fun to learn about this, and as you go along your journey, buying condos and building your real estate empire, right? So, for you guys, in the real estate world, obviously, if people are looking for investment advice, I mean, this is the type of people you need to be connected to, right? To learn about the markets, especially in our area here in Connecticut. Certainly how best to reach out to you guys if they want to learn more about real estate investing or learn about the markets.
The best way is, text, call, email us. So I'd say probably my number and my email. So phone number 203-561-6297, and email is DAN as in Nancy, IM as in Mary @kw.com. Danny M @kw.com.
Yeah, we'll put that in there too, so they can contact you directly if they're learning about this area here. And that's KW is a very successful real estate brokerage firm around here. So definitely I'd recommend reaching out to them if you have interest in personal residence or even investment sort of stuff.
And if you have interest in potentially joining real estate, then definitely reach out to us, because this guy, that's his whole job right now. So
Definitely. I love taking people through the process and then seeing them to start funding the lives of their dreams. So definitely reach out to us.
That's awesome.
My phone number, 203-515-7007. Adonis @kw.com.
They will not treat you wrong. So the last thing I want to ask you guys, and you either one of you can answer this, because we talk about wealth in my world all the time, and it's usually a dollar figure. But what I really try to stress to people is trying to build wealth in all areas of their lives, right? And having abundance of anything you'd actually want. So, if you kind of think about other areas of your life, like what would you say you have that you feel wealthy in today? And what are some things you're doing to keep it wealthy, keep wealth there?
I think I feel wealthy in terms of my relationships and my knowledge. I really do feel like those two things carry me far in terms of my finances too. Because of those two things, we can be, we're well off now, but to continue to be, to grow the empire, so to speak, and all of that. But it really is, it comes down to the people and the things you learn. So that's kind of what I feel.
Yeah, I'd say I'm wealthy in spirit and optimism. I spend my days laughing and smiling and learning. I'm always thrust in some kind of environment that's going to help me to evolve as a person. So I like to learn things and then do what I can to teach it to others, so it ingrains even more deeply in me. So that's what I would say to that.
That's great. No, it's so funny. You think about social media. I sometimes see you guys there, and obviously sometimes we know social media can be a potentially fancy land, but I don't think it is for you guys. It's what's going on, and it's the way you guys are, and bringing joy and having fun, and still working hard. So it's fun to see. So, well, listen, thank you so much for your time today. Hopefully, our listeners here, you got something here, and you opening up your eyes that what's possible here, right? And it can be possible as long as you continue to learn and experience and try stuff, and really highly encourage you to do so. And so I'll leave it at that, and hopefully you'll come back for the next round of the client sort of discussions, because you hear some unique perspectives that at least give you some things to chew on, and hopefully bring you some value. But thanks for joining.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it, and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances, so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.